Five, four, three, two, one. You know what goes great with coronavirus? Lyme disease.
Yeah,
Hello,
they should.
everybody.
They
Sorry, what?
Budweiser beer should rename itself HIV beer in order to compete.
Yeah, in order to be as meme worthy and whatnot. But yes.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. It is the Dark Conservatarian, and I am here so far with one of my co hosts, Loudmouth Reviews.
Yeah.
Yay. And so the opening subject of today's show, it's gonna probably be like a short one. I don't plan to go that long, but yeah, I'm not showing my face because I'm having a bad hair day, or at least if I had any that much hair, anyways. No, it was mostly because I was feeling like and being a kind of a lazy piece of crap throughout today, and so I did not prepare a whole lot. But yeah. So anyway, the opening subject shall be the coronavirus, and then we're going to talk about a couple of other issues, get another couple of articles that I had saved up off the venue. Um, let's see here, and maybe one more if I feel like the show wasn't long enough. But anyway, so Loudmouth, what do you have to say about the coronavirus?
I think it's going to get bad. I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And I 100% believe that the government, and particularly the Chinese government, have been panicking, and China's been lying about the true numbers. Never really made much sense for them closing off entire cities over what they claimed at the time was a few hundred cases. I'm like, I don't believe this. What? And you're gonna, and in a city with 11 million people, they're building new hospitals to house what they claimed were only a few thousand people. Why on earth wouldn't they have enough bed for a few thousand people unless they were lying and a lot more people were infected than they claimed?
I don't know. Maybe they're. Well, I have no reason to trust China, but maybe they are just inadvertently preparing for the worst if it does get worse. But I personally seem to share a little bit more of an optimistic view on the coronavirus itself. Anyways, I think
the Chinese Communist Party to this day never says the Tiananmen Square massacre never happened. There is absolutely no reason for anyone to believe anything they say. And this plague only got as bad as it did because they spent the early days of it imprisoning doctors and other healthcare workers who were trying to post on social media to sound alarm bells about this virus. The Chinese Communist Party imprisoned them in order to not start a panic.
It's not because of China as to why that I'm optimistic about it. It's because of my own research that I've gotten from other sources on the virus, on COVID-19, as it is more officially scientifically referred to as.
Yeah.
COVID, however it is. But my opinion on coronavirus, like from what numbers I have read, the average seasonal flu seems to result from more deaths per year than what coronavirus has. It even has come close to, anyways, thus far.
That's like assuming you believe China's numbers, and I don't. The crematoriums are running 24/7. Bodies get sent there of elderly people who die from this virus, and they're typically not tested or recorded in the death toll from this virus. And they ban funerals there, so most of the loved ones of these people in China aren't even allowed to bury their loved ones.
They literally ban funerals in China.
What's that?
They literally ban funerals in China.
Yeah, I don't know if in all of China or just areas that were under quarantine. I'm not quite sure on that. But
I thought you were saying that that's a general thing in China, despite whether or not there's a mass disease running through there.
No. Funerals usually go on in China, but I believe in some quarantine zones they were banning them because they don't, assuming the person died of the virus, which is likely, they don't want it spreading to other mourners, so they would just haul off the body and they would cremate it, and they have crematoriums running 24/7 over there.
So your reason as to taking a little bit more of a pessimistic view than me on the coronavirus is because you are highly skeptical of what numbers that are coming out of China thus far?
Yeah, and if you think about it, in the modern world, a pandemic eventually arising that wipes out a chunk of the population kind of seems like an inevitability. In 10,000 years ago, if a weird strain of virus appeared in a single human population, another tribe that lived 10 miles away wouldn't even notice. But in today's mass interconnected world with planes, trains, automobiles, and vast travel resources and huge crowded cities, it just seems like the perfect environment for the right virus to come and spread like wildfire.
Well, I
Fire.
guess for in that regards, we'll have to just wait and see until the official or until new numbers come out of China as far as deaths go. But so far, it's like only been, I don't know, excuse me, in the few thousands as far as death, or well,
And if you look some of
not
the
deaths.
video,
I think it's like what's the right word? People who catch the virus, cases of the virus. That's what I'm looking for.
and another thing when they compare to the coronavirus to influenza, they say influenza, they're talking about hundreds of different strains. All right, this is a single strain causing all this damage. And the total death toll from people infected is at least 20 times higher.
Well, swine flu is down considerably, so not not nowadays, if not non-existent.
Yeah. Like this
So
100 years ago.
so that very major flu right there is kind of out of the picture. So it would be some of the more minor ones that I think this article would be like keeping into mind more than anything.
100 years ago, look up how many people the Spanish flu killed. It killed during
Yeah.
that pandemic. It killed about 50 million people.
Right, and that's not to like downplay all the other flus that have happened throughout history that might have been more major. It's just I'm not so convinced, and some of my other subscribers and followers and whatnot are just not convinced thus far that it has gotten to that level of severity yet, as far as
Man,
coronavirus goes.
mankind's oldest enemy, the virus. Pretty much like so much about our anatomy is adapted to living with viruses. It's actually the entire reason why multicellular organisms sexually reproduce. Why on earth do they sexually reproduce and only pass on half their genes and mix them with others instead of just making copies of themselves? Why do they do it? Because if they did it that way, it would be very easy for a virus, a single strain of it, to wipe out the entire species. The genetic variation from sexual reproduction makes it much more difficult for viruses to kill us all. So
I think another reason as to why we cannot just clone ourselves is because we're not built that way.
But I'm saying, but why aren't we built that way, though? Why do multicellular organisms trade genes with each other instead of just cloning themselves? It is possible to do that. Like some reptiles, like there was this Komodo dragon in this one zoo, a female who gave birth to a clutch of eggs, which baffled everyone there because she hadn't been in contact with any males in years, and people were just like, "What the fuck?" And they found that Komodo dragons can actually, in some circumstances, asexually reproduce, but basically just fucking themselves and giving birth to kind of clones. But
Right.
but of course, most multicellular organisms don't do that because the variation that comes from sex, the fact that we aren't identical copies of our parents, and we have a more diverse genome. It's what prevents a single strain of virus from killing us all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, so far, according to, well, Click Orlando, which I think is more of a local news site that's based in Florida, the cases thus far that have been found, well, for like the regular flu as they show here, 9.3 to 45 million cases in the U.S. per year, and with COVID-19, aka the coronavirus, it's 209 cases in the U.S. Thus far. As I've already pre-read this article before going live here,
But one really scary
And
aspect
I don't think that the 209 is going to increase that much, considering the fact that we're almost a quarter way through the year.
Oh, it only just got here, dude. And keep in mind, this virus can lay dormant for weeks. People can be infected with it and spread and infect their family members, their coworkers. A kid infected with it could infect their entire school. Some guy could go to a concert with the disease and infect the entire concert, and he wouldn't even know he was sick.
Okay.
You ever see that movie Outbreak from the 90s?
No, I have not.
And, well, that movie involves a fictional outbreak of a strain of Ebola. There's this one guy accidentally gets infected from this monkey from a lab, and he goes to the movies with his girlfriend, and he just starts coughing, and all the whole theater's laughing, and it focuses on these little viruses that are going and infecting everyone in the theater, and then the whole theater just within a few hours just starts dropping dead. It won't be quite that severe, but it was a scary scene because that really a virulent strain coming is not really that far out of the realm of possibility.
Are we talking about the boogeyman flu, Dark Khan? Asks Metal Minister. Yes, basically what we're talking about here. And I so far am not so convinced of the worst scenario anyways. I mean, Loudmouth is bringing his case as to why that he thinks that we should be considerably more, I don't know, for lack of better wording, pessimistic about it. From what I have researched and read about the coronavirus, though, is that it'll more likely affect the more elderly people. And
our parents, our grandparents, yeah.
Like people in their 60s elderly and 70s.
Are significantly, well, they're significantly more likely to die from the disease than younger people are. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not. But if you're young and healthy, you're not out of the woods.
Well,
there have been young, healthy people who have died of this disease.
Well, of course, I'm sure. Like, I think one of the original scientists or whatever that originally found the virus in the Wuhan province of China was a younger person. Or at least that's the implication that I got.
Yeah, but I'm wondering with him. I'm wondering how many of them have actually were killed by the virus, or whether the Communist Party poisoned them and used this outbreak that's going on to say the virus did it. I wonder if China's been using that as an opportunity to eliminate some political opponents.
Yeah, as Metal Minister also said in the chat, anyone as paranoid as to think this might be a dry run by China for later biological weapons, some of the more almost, I guess you could say, conspiratorial type theories when it comes to coronavirus and China?
Oh, I actually do. I think likely China was experimenting with bioweapons and accidentally unleashed one on their own population. And which is always a really stupid thing to do, because using a virus as a weapon is like building a gun that fires in both directions. It never ends well.
You know, it really wouldn't be surprising, because China is a big and deep country. Like, it wouldn't surprise me that much if they did, like, if they are doing some almost Nazi-esque type stuff.
Oh, no, it wouldn't surprise me at all. There's this article, take this with a grain of salt, I'm not sure if this is the case, that said that sometimes animals that were experimented with in biolabs, sometimes instead of properly cremating them, some workers at those labs were selling them for food. What if that's how this virus got out?
Sent 1000 asked further up in the chat, honestly, does any one of us really trust any form of government or mainstream media? That is a point.
No,
like,
no, you should always
on the one hand, you have the Chinese government reporting their numbers as far as deaths go, to kind of almost give off, I guess, what Loudmouth views to be an overly optimistic view of the coronavirus. And then you have, on the other hand, you have the mainstream media, particularly the U.S. mainstream media, that's giving an almost more pessimistic view on the virus.
Not really. The mainstream media has been full of really retarded articles about how you're racist if you're concerned about this virus. If you don't invite people from Wuhan over and let them spit in your face, you're racist, according to the mainstream media.
That almost sounds like hyperbole, but
Well, okay,
I saw.
it was hyperbole, but there were like a lot of articles that were saying it was racist to be concerned about this disease, and it's dumb as hell. No, it
I
really
also
is.
like saw an article. Well, okay, I did not actually see it, but I like read the title of a video that was posted on YouTube by ABC, NBC, or one of those mainstream outlets. Might have even been MSNBC. Not sure. That was going on about how Trump is supposedly downplaying the numbers as far as cases and deaths of coronavirus goes.
Oh, he absolutely is.
So I
And you
don't
know
think
why
I
he
don't
is?
think so I don't think it's like a one-sided story that, oh,
No,
the
no, no,
mainstream
not
media
no.
is definitely being
Some
optimistic,
I
giving
should
an
have said
optimistic view about the coronavirus.
sorry. Some elements of the mainstream media. There were a couple dumbass articles, but yeah, probably not like the majority of the media in that regard. But I'm saying there were a couple like really stupid articles in that regard. But I guess you should expect from them. I mean, remember those dumbass articles we read from Everyday Feminism? So some outfits will always like post really stupid shit.
Who knows? The high temps might activate the virus in this case, but who knows? Has sent 1000. I don't
Yeah,
know. Something that
that's my
I've
biggest hope. That maybe this virus won't handle the summer very well. So maybe once it gets warmer, it basically won't live as long on other surfaces, and thus won't be able to spread as fast.
It's almost already getting springtime warm here in Wichita, Kansas. Anyways.
Yeah. So if that's the case, which we don't know yet, then we could luck out.
JC Armitage in the chat says silver linings, but at least the people that were killed by coronavirus aren't reanimating as zombies. Dot dot
Nice,
dot.
nice,
I think.
okay, nice bit of dark humor there. Okay.
Yeah. And so, okay, so we kind of both gave our own opinions about the coronavirus as far as to whether or not to be on the edge of our seats about it, or if whether or not that we can relax.
I'm
I
not saying
seem
to
to be
panic, but I'm
what?
saying people should be concerned with it. People should not treat this as a nothing burger.
All right. I mean, be
Yeah.
vigilant, everybody, I guess. And
Be
of course,
visual.
the article does advise always wash your hands and wipe down surfaces that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, like metal, glass, and stuff like that. That strands of the virus might just stick on. But anyway, so putting the actual coronavirus aside, even though that I personally, as the title of this stream goes, coronavirus, why you shouldn't worry. I don't think you should worry so much about the coronavirus itself, but I think that there is a reason to be concerned of a side effect of the coronavirus, though. That being like the economic downturns that might come from it. And I just recently watched my 2 cents Today with 2 Cents podcast on this, and it was a very good episode, everybody. If you hadn't seen it, go ahead and watch it already. I think I have the video linked down below in the description box. And basically, he gives his own. It's more, I guess, an opinion or theory that he's giving more than anything, but I think it's a reasonable one, where he thinks that because of the coronavirus and people's pessimisms of it, like stock market crashing because of it, in loom of the coronavirus, etc., that we will like see a recession by the time of the general election coming.
Oh, it's very possible. In fact, that's why I think Trump is downplaying all this. He's afraid that a panic over it will lead to an economic downturn, and if the economy goes down, his chances of reelection are pretty small.
Yeah. That there will be that actually. Sorry, I'm trying to like remember more specifically of what 2 Cents said. He also mentioned that more specifically what actually might happen with the recession. What might cause the recession is the bubble bursting as far as interest rates. I don't know. It's a whole bunch of economic jargon that I cannot break down that well.
Well,
But
yeah, when you close down massive cities, when you put a tenth of the Earth's population under quarantine, you're damn right the economy is going to react to shit like that.
right, and then and then Trump will just play it off and blame the coronavirus entirely. And when Biden gets possibly nominated, which Two Cents thinks he is more likely to get nominated than
Oh,
Sanders,
he's
but
got it almost in the bag.
yeah. And once Biden does get nominated and starts going head to head with Trump in the general election, he'll start pointing out Biden will start blaming that it's because of free markets, supposedly, as to why that the recession happened. When really, we haven't exactly been a free market nowadays.
When it originated in communist China.
Right. Or at least that was one of the arguments that Two Cents said that Joe Biden would use, and he'll exploit that, and he'll make the promise that elect me, and I'll put in more regulations to stop future economic downturns from happening, and so forth.
Because of course more regulations would prevent China from creating viruses in their labs, or even if it didn't originate in a lab, or even if it did actually originate in their food markets, the disgusting and unsanitary conditions in those food markets just makes a plague coming from one of them almost inevitable. China's been fucking up the world in so many ways. There's this one great video on it. It also shows how a lot of animals are being driven into extinction because of Chinese alternative medicine, where they'll sell rhino horns as cures for cancer. No, rhino horns don't cure cancer. They are made of the same material as your fingernails. But rhinos are shot every day and are being driven to extinction because of this stupid and unscientific belief that's common in China. For example, China's been fucking up the world in so many ways. Now we got this virus that's going to kill a lot of people because of China's maliciousness or incompetence.
China is definitely a regime that needs to fall, but unfortunately, they're so well established.
It seems unlikely. Yeah,
they're so well established as a superpower. It's almost impossible for that to happen anytime soon. But I think that's all that I want to say in regards to the coronavirus, unless there's something very quickly you wanted to say.
I don't know. I've said a lot about it. I've been following, reading a lot about it in the last couple months, and it's scary.
Yeah, and honestly, I will give that you probably have been reading up on it a bit more than me. I just been reading some of the more bare bones information about it. But so moving on to the next subject, this is like a Huffington Post article, and HuffPo is more of a blog site more than anything. So of course, oh God, HuffPo, says JC Armitage. Yeah. This might be just a whole bunch of response bait that we're looking at here, but let's read this to check out what this person has to say. Actually, this was posted on Facebook. Both of these two articles I saw shared on Facebook, and I wanted to read them. But the first article we're going to read and respond to is from Huffington Post. And Kristin Neuhaus, doctor and Tiller colleague, is the latest casualty in Kansas abortion war.
What happened to her?
Let's see. And hello, Cat Chat in the chat. Looks like you got a new profile picture. And Kristin Neuhaus has seen better days. The doctor once ran a medical clinic that provided abortions in Lawrence, Kansas, and later worked with the late Dr. George Tiller. Now she says her house, which sits on a desolate stretch of road in rural Kansas, is falling apart. Okay, what does that have to do about the abortion?
What the fuck does that have to do with abortion laws? I had a leak in my pipes, so the other month I had to pay the plumber $200. What does that do with that?
So therefore, that has something to do with the wars for liberty, the legislative wars for libertarianism, loudmouth. Let's make all these cockamamie connections.
You know what? I stubbed my toe the other day. I got to blame the Democrats.
Yep. But let's try to see if in a few more paragraphs they go trying to connect this actually to abortion legislation or whatever. An underground pipe from the well is so rusted that the basement floods if she doesn't turn off the water. Health insurance, which covers a lot of the medications for her son's diabetes, costs about $1,200 a month. We live pretty much hand to mouth, the soft-spoken 55-year-old who goes by Chris told the Huffington Post. We're basically in the process of getting bankruptcy paperwork together, but we're moving slowly on it. Okay, still waiting for the mention of abortion. Neuhaus was stripped Neuhaus was stripped of her medical license last summer after the state of Kansas determined that mental health consultations she gave to 11 young women seeking late-term abortions didn't meet the standard of care. The females were between the ages of 10 and 18. So that's what it has to do. So basically, she didn't have a backup plan for if she lost her job as, an abortion provider. She had her medical license stripped from her because of her abortion practices, and now she's struggling financially with damages done to the house and, having to pay for diabetes and so forth.
Okay.
The state, that's what I'm getting so far anyways. The state charged her nearly $93,000 for the proceedings. A huge percentage of that was the testimony of that forensic psychiatrist, Neuhaus said, referring to Dr. Lisa Gold, the state's expert witness who was flown in from Washington, D.C. at a cost of about $74,000 to testify against her. Since losing her license, Neuhaus says she's been in limbo. I'm where I should have been about 30 years ago, essentially like starting over, she said. You shouldn't have picked such a controversial path as far as occupations go then, ma'am. But before all this happened, yeah, I was better off financially, but I was better off psychologically too. I felt more confident and strong. Those are things I've really lost. In some ways, though, her life has been...
This article's creeping me out now.
What?
This article is really creeping me the fuck out. It's like this article's dark. Like, it's really fucking disturbing.
Yep. In some ways, though, her life has been calmer since she lost her license. It's rare that her family's mailboxes run over these days. Probably because she's finally out of the occupation that people hate her hate that she was in. And now, don't get me wrong. This is not me condoning any actions of property damage or violence against her if she was to still remain as an abortion provider. But I digress. And the man who used to sit ominously outside her house in a pickup truck is long gone. Okay, yeah, I'm not really gonna condone that. I mean, unless she was actually doing abortions at her house and he was protesting it, I don't see the justification for this. At her new job as a research instructor at the University of Kansas, she doesn't have to wear a bulletproof vest when she enters and exits the building. She hasn't received a death threat in years. And I'm going to say that despite of how much I disagree with her profession, that I do not condone death threats against, I especially don't condone death threats against people who get abortions, but even those who provide abortions, really, I probably will not feel that sad for if it does happen, but I don't condone it. I don't condone creep, says Cat Chat, yet. JC Armitage says, so her financial situation has less to do with being a eugenics doctor and more to do with being unwilling or unable to diversify her economic portfolio.
Did you say eugenics
pretty much,
doctor?
JC. What?
Did you say eugenics doctor?
I don't know. I think JC Armitage is just being a little bit hyperbolic because a lot of people like to connect abortion to eugenics,
I guess, but okay. Just wondering if I heard that right.
Yep. That's like saying a person says they are a Christian but don't believe that there is evil in the world. Why would anyone want to be a nurse and support abortion? As Sent1000. And okay, this is mostly just a conversation I think that Sent1000 and Cat Chat are having with each other in the chat, so I'm going to leave it be. But you two go ahead and talk. Neuhaus's home in Nortonville, Kansas, where she lived with her husband Mike and their son Tristan, 16. That was what description of the picture there. When an administrative judge invalidated her license in June 2012, his primary reason was that her patient records were inadequate, quote unquote. At the time, Kansas law required a second opinion from a licensed physician before a woman could obtain a late-term abortion in order to prove that she would suffer substantial and irreversible harm to a major bodily function if she continued with her pregnancy. Mental health was considered to be a major bodily function. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, as I said before, as shit as I think that PTSD is, I don't consider that to be a justification for killing someone else off. That being like, doing an abortion. Neuhaus freely admits that her documentation was indeed sparse on detail. She notes that the Kansas District Attorney began investigating abortion clinics, including Tiller's in 2003 until his murder in 2009. Tiller was one of the few doctors who would perform abortions on fetuses older than 25 weeks. Yeah, fuck that guy. I mean, Tiller was a name, one of the oldest names that I had heard as far as like the abortion battles go, and of course there's Kermit Gosnell. But yeah, I vaguely knew of Tiller's practices, but I did not fully know until like recent years of how late he would like do abortions. We all knew that we were operating in a fishbowl, she said. I made those records skimpy because I realized that they could get into the wrong hands. And sure enough, they did. Why? Because they're reporting and exposing your immorality? Oh, the horror. The records, which contained personal details about the young women Neuhaus evaluated, were obtained by Kansas District Attorney Phil Klein in 2007. Neuhaus knows how Klein got them. His lead investigator, she says, tricked her into handing them over by falsely promising her that he'd give them right back. What she doesn't know is how they were obtained by Bill O'Reilly.
Everything's Bill O'Reilly's fault.
Oh, yeah. As big a problem as I have with Bill O'Reilly, like he can be a bit of a crackpot when it comes to the religion debates, and I don't know. He can be a little bit.
The tides to go in and out.
What?
What caused the tides to go in and out?
All right. Yeah, I vaguely heard about his whole moon segments, but
yeah,
not only that,
to know how gravity works.
Not only that, but of how much of a blowhard he can be for the Republicans. But I at least hear that Bill O'Reilly is a pro-lifer. As far as how radical and off base his rhetoric might be against abortion, I don't know that for certain. But I still applaud the guy for at least being a pro-lifer in general anyways. In a segment on his show, the conservative TV host broadcast personal details about two of the women. Okay, what kind of personal details? I mean, because if we're talking about I don't know. Don't reveal more than that is necessary, O'Reilly, who later received abortions from Tiller. The patients, of course, had no idea their personal details would be discussed on a national news program. O'Reilly did not respond to multiple requests for comment on where he obtained the documents. The records contain few identifying details about the females, but in one case, Neuhaus describes a 10-year-old girl who was raped by her uncle as tiny and physically incapable of being able to have a baby. And I'm just going to say right now, I think that if you have a case like that, as far as abortion goes, I mean, this might fall under, actually, raped. This falls under the rape case, but this might damn well also fall under the life of mother case. And I use the term mother very loosely, people, because we're talking about a freaking 10-year-old here. So
that story's really fucked up.
Yeah, really.
That's really fucked up, dude.
But because this falls under a life of mother circumstance, most pro-lifers would believe that abortion would be necessary to at least save the girl's life. Another girl was drugged and then raped by multiple men who videotaped their crime. Sick fucks.
Videotaped their crime? What kind of sick fuck? God. These stories are disturbing.
This whole article is disturbing right here.
Yeah, this whole article, this is some dark shit, Zach. What the fuck, man?
I just saw this shared on my Facebook page one time, and I thought, yeah, I gotta commentate on this.
Okay, keep going, but man, this
is... That's the kind of backstory I didn't put in the records, Neuhaus explained to Mother Jones in 2011. Shortly after her license was invalidated that summer, Neuhaus filed an appeal in district court in Topeka to get it back. Although I do also want to say that I would think that in the case of like this 10-year-old girl who very well has her life at risk from this pregnancy, that she could have probably damn well went to some other doctor for the procedure rather than Miss Neuhaus.
I don't know, dude. It's I just this is too much.
You think you're gonna leave soon or something?
I don't know. I'm fine.
All right. If she wasn't an abortion doctor, this never would have happened, said attorney Corey Trussell, who's handling the appeal. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about an occupation in an industry that is more controversial than the freaking oil industry. So, of course, there are going to be possible legal repercussions for taking on this type of occupation. We argued that the decision was arbitrary and capricious. None of her patients ever complained. None of them were harmed, so the context of the case being abortion is why they pursued it so adamantly. Trussell added that the Kansas Board of Healing Arts, the regulatory agency that took away Neuhaus's license, couldn't provide any other examples of times they had revoked a medical license because of an issue with documentation. In some ways, the state's persecution of Neuhaus isn't surprising. Kansas has waged war on abortion rights for years, and I applaud that. I am glad
for not providing documentation over your cases. That's a very serious violation for any kind of medical field. All right, that is bullshit right there. That right there is some grade A bullshit.
But Loudmouth, the only reason why you want to, I don't know. I was about to
bullshit, right? Yeah, they're lying right there.
The only reason why you want to regulate the abortion industry in that way is just because, not because you want safe abortions provided, but because you don't want abortions to happen at all. I don't know. I know your opinion on abortion is kind of mixed, and you do not outright want abortion banned, but it's still, I just had to echo that very same argument that pro-choicers like to throw around all the time in regards of regulating abortion.
Yeah, but that's just flat out false with that right there. So that it just kind of it's lying right there.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I hear a pro-choicer be saying to a pro-lifer or a pro-life legislator say the only reason why you want to regulate abortion is because you want them to happen less frequent, not because you want safe abortions happen, I go thinking to myself, yeah, that's kind of the point, bruh. Don't want abortions happening at all, safe or not. Today in Kansas, unless her life is in danger, a woman must receive state-directed counseling designed to discourage her from having an abortion. Yeah. And then wait 24 hours before having the procedure. She must be told that evidence suggests a fetus older than 20 weeks responds to pain the same way an infant does, and that abortion terminates the life of a whole, separate, unique, living human being.
Which are all factually true statements.
Yeah. Yeah, they're separate in that they're their own organism, but not separate in that they're literally disconnected because, not disconnected until you exit the womb.
Obviously, yeah, but that's scientifically accurate right there. But.
I want as few abortions happening as possible, says Cat Chat. I agree. And here, have a moderator role, by the way, Cat Chat. About time that you got one. And increases the risk of infertility, premature birth in future pregnancies, and breast cancer. The National Institute for Cancer has said the latter is not true. I don't know. I get mixed information as in regards of whether or not abortion increases risk of breast cancer or not. You about to say something?
No.
It sounded like that you were saying anyway.
No, my phone accidentally. That was just for my phone.
Oh, it must have been reverb. Okay, my bad. Moreover, if a woman is insured under the Affordable Care Act, her insurance policy will not cover abortion. Yeah, and I agree with that because even if abortion is to be allowed in the country, I at least don't want my own taxes being funding it. Excuse me. And okay, to be more clear, folks, the ACA, Obamacare, in other words, our taxes are not going directly into abortion, but they're going into subsidizing these healthcare insurance plans. And for them taxes to, and for abortion to be covered under that subsidized healthcare insurance plan, that would be a rather indirect way of our taxes going into, subsidizing abortions. So just to make myself clear here, even in cases of rape and incest, even private insurance in Kansas is barred from covering abortion unless women purchase a separate rider at an additional cost. Doctors in Kansas are allowed to lie to pregnant women. Let's reread that. Doctors in Kansas are allowed to lie to pregnant women about birth defects or genetic abnormalities if they believe that knowledge would lead the woman to abort the fetus. Wow. Wow, you're trying to be a sleazy car salesman to convince them more into getting their abortion. Fuck off. Eesh. Under Republican Governor Sam Brownback, abortion rights in Kansas have been further curtailed. Good. The governor has kept his promise to sign any anti-abortion legislation that hits his desk. A bill currently in the Kansas legislature seeks to outlaw abortions after a fetal heartbeat can be heard. If passed, it would be the most restrictive anti-abortion law in the nation. Yeah, and fast forward to current day, I don't think that has passed. I don't really think so, anyways. Otherwise,
I think it did, but the courts struck it down, I believe.
Okay. So yeah, in a way, it passed, but did not stick around. Yeah. Because otherwise, if it did stick around, then Southwind Women's Center, which is the local abortion clinic that I can name off the top of my head, anyways, they would be shut down. Anyway, you would like no abortion. Okay, never mind. While Trussell says the judge handling Neuhaus's appeal is impartial, he adds it's impossible to say whether or not the appeal will be successful. They expect a decision sometime next year, Neuhaus said. However, not everyone is rooting for the same outcome, obviously. If the court rules in Neuhaus's favor, it will be a travesty, Cheryl Solinger said, the senior policy advisor for the anti-abortion group Operation Rescue. Yeah. Which relocated to Kansas in 2002 to shut down Tiller's clinic, began the long process to deprive Neuhaus of her license by filing a complaint in 2006. Okay, you don't even have to be a very passionate pro-lifer to be, against Neuhaus and Tiller, because as was mentioned in your very own article, Tiller committed late-term abortions, past the 24-week mark. So yeah, I mean, even moderate pro-choicers who at least believe in banning late-term abortions can somewhat get behind this. Although they probably won't as much because of how much they think that the pro-life community goes a little bit too far with Tiller and Neuhaus, but there's a point to be made there. Speaking on the phone to HuffPost last week, she called Neuhaus a quack and a danger to the public. I don't know. I guess I would somewhat agree. Pro-lifer for life, pro-lifer for life, pro-lifer for life, says Sent1 1000. Yeah, good to hear. So am I. I can't understand how anyone would think she's even competent enough to put a Band-Aid on someone, Solinger said. There's some indication that she didn't even speak to the women she provided consultations for. Yet critics of the state's actions against Neuhaus have pointed out that Solinger is a convicted felon who served time in a federal prison for her role in an attempted bombing of a San Diego abortion clinic in 1988. Oh. Okay. Yeah. For the sake of the pro-life movement, people don't go committing, by definition, terrorist attacks like this. Please.
Does that even need to be said?
I don't know. I guess so. I mean, it was mentioned in the article, so I thought that I had to say something.
Well, okay.
Solinger's name and a phone number were also reportedly seen on the dashboard of the car belonging to Scott Roeder, who murdered Tiller in 2009. If Neuhaus gets her license back, it will help allow her to participate in more clinical studies in her research job at the University of Kansas Medical Center's Department of Family Medicine. But she definitely would not use it to go back to work providing abortion care for women. I've had enough, she said. If I had to do it again, I wouldn't do it without an army. I feel that people have a responsibility to stand up for their own rights at some point. Except some of us don't believe you have a right to an abortion, but I digress. And if you don't stand up for your rights, you will lose them, she added. We're seeing that everywhere. You can't expect people to keep martyring themselves. Okay. Cat Chat says in the chat, a bombing, the point of pro-life is to prevent as many lives as possible from unjust death. How is a bombing anything but the opposite of that? Yeah, exactly, Cat Chat. And that's the end of the article. And I gotta say, if you haven't provided yourself a backup plan for a very controversial occupation that people want to very likely ban, then that's on you, Neuhaus.
But from what I read in this article, she only lost her license due to improper documentation. That's kind of a serious charge in any kind of medical field.
Yeah, even if you aren't for completely banning abortion, you can still see as to how it's kind of on Neuhaus. It's Neuhaus's own fault that she ended up in this circumstance. And it almost seems as if HuffPost is almost, or this particular writer at Huffington Post anyways, Hunter Stewart is the name of this person, seems to almost be sadistically implying that, hey, it's all right that you did not want to provide documentation. Or at least that's what I was getting anyways. But how long is this article out of curiosity? It's a little lengthy. I think I might make this the last one of the day and then, call it a day. Glorious occupational licensing, one of the biggest reasons why healthcare in the U.S. is so goddamn expensive, says JC Armitage. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why abortion is so expensive, and I say good thing that abortion is so expensive, because if it cannot be banned outright, then at least there's the incentives for people to not want to get an abortion, being it too expensive or too much a headache or whatever. Anyway, so next article I also found came across on Facebook and was shared by a friend, is from Snopes.com, and it goes talking about the 1956 Republican platform, all the different positions that they held back then as compared to right now. And the meme primarily showed, or the front banner for this article anyways, 1956 Republican platform. 1, provide federal assistance to low-income communities, form of welfare. 2, protect Social Security, not technically a form of welfare, but kind of along the lines. 3, provide asylum for refugees, as compared to Republicans being against Syrian refugees. 4, extend minimum wage, which Republicans are at least against raising the minimum wage, if not for decreasing and abolishing the minimum wage. 5, improve unemployment benefit system so it covers more people. I think they're skeptical on that nowadays. 6, strengthen labor laws so workers can easily join a union. I don't know. 7, assure equal pay for equal work regardless of sex, which the gender wage gap is like a is a myth anyway, so that's a moot point. Yeah. Anyway, let's get on with it. A few weeks before the 2012 U.S. presidential election, a meme began to circulate on social media suggesting the 1956 Republican platform included policies that would more closely match those of progressives in later years. Yeah, some of these are more left-leaning, and the Republicans have gone kind of right-leaning in some of these, or at least on the surface anyways. Maybe their actual legislative actions speaks otherwise from their words, but I don't know for sure. The tenets listed in the 1956 Republican platform graphic certainly deviate from many of the GOP's current party lines, but were the following cited planks notably different 6 decades ago. Yeah, I already read those, so I'm moving on. It's difficult to make a direct comparison for a few reasons. One is that the Republican Party's national platform is not necessarily the same as the issues espoused by individual candidates at the federal, state, or local levels. In recent years, the advent of social media has enabled candidates and political organizations to push individually important agendas that may not hew to the party's overall national platform. Quickly addressing some from the chat, JC Armitage says, no, you misunderstand me. I was talking about every form of healthcare. Well, right, but the issue of the last article is more specifically about abortion. Like, I don't want all other practices of healthcare to be made more expensive because of licensing. Like medicine, ambulance rides, hospital visits, etc. Abortion was the last thing on my mind when I made that comment, says JC. Okay. Darkcon is roboting. Huh. Loudmouth, can you hear me? Am I roboting?
A little bit.
1 second. Don't know if that does anything different. Let me check my mic settings.
You sound okay now.
Audio. Okay, I'm on my new microphone right now, so anyway. Another issue is defining what the party's platform is at any given time. The most recent available Republican Party platform dated to 2012 during the campaign of Mitt Romney. Not all issues addressed in the graphic above were directly mentioned or comparably referenced in the 2012 platform, and individual Republican Party members who have made statements about platform issues since then do not necessarily speak for the GOP at large. Right, obvious things obvious. Judge
roboting again. I don't know. Yeah.
But anyway, obvious things obvious. Judge politicians individually by their records and, by their espoused beliefs and voting records, etc. Although SO would kind of disagree with me on that point, but I digress on that. The image displayed above first points to assistance for low-income communities, language that does not specifically appear in the 1956 Republican platform. Under the heading of labor, the original document supported to a degree several of the positions summarized in the graphic in respect to minimum wage laws, unemployment assistance, and equal pay irrespective of gender. And I want to add, if the shift in the Republican Party's general beliefs from 1956 to now is like more right-leaning, is more against business regulation and so forth, well then, good.
Yeah, but the people who've put around this meme, they won't acknowledge the fact that the average leftist the average conservative in 1965 would probably be seen as a liberal, and the average leftist would be seen as a lunatic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just imagine transporting them back to the 50s, one of these kooky leftists from today. Imagine them going around saying gender is a social construct in 1956.
Yeah. The only reason as to why I can think that maybe this article was shared around was to say that I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, it kind of connects to the whole arguments of Democrats were the founders of the KKK, or they were once racists, et cetera, et cetera. It kind of roots back to the whole argument of which party is more racist. Like, Democrats will come at Republicans, you're a bunch of racists, then Republicans will come back to Democrats. Your past is littered with racism. Sorry, what?
It's kind of a dumb debate that no one should really be having.
You know, it is a bit of a dumb debate, and I think S-Man might be in the right for us, or he doesn't outright say, but for essentially implying that it is a bit of a dumb debate. Like, it should really... it really is. I'd say that Democrats are like in the wrong for being so flagrant with their accusations of racism, but at the same time, Republicans are off base by coming at the argument in that way, by saying, "Oh, in the past you were this way, you were even more racist," or whatever.
Because I guess they do it because they're sick of the Democrats constantly accusing them of shit for no reason. I guess it's just a way of. I guess it's just a defense mechanism, but I don't know. It's dumb both ways.
Yeah, I mean, but let's keep in mind that that today's Democrats does not exactly reflect the beliefs of the Democratic Party back then, because the Democrats back then are either retired or dead. Same way goes for the Republicans of now compared to back then. The Republicans that might have been a little bit more economically left back then than the Republicans nowadays don't necessarily reflect each other's beliefs. So, yeah, it's a whole bunch of cult of personality might not be the right term for it. Collectivist mindset as far as people's beliefs go. But really, in my opinion, we should be like judging them off of current chronology. Yeah, for whatever politicians exist nowadays within the party, we judge the party's beliefs off of nowadays beliefs that they hold. Anyways, the Eisenhower administration will continue to fight for dynamic and progressive programs, which, among other things, will stimulate improved job safety of our workers through assistance to the states, employees, and employers. Now, I do want to say that as far as like safety regulations go, that's not on my top agenda to want to repeal. Although there are a whole lot of safety regulations that go overboard. Like, for example, you cannot walk through an overhead door at a plant on foot. Apparently, that's a thing. Have you heard of that regulation, Loudmouth?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Have you heard of the regulation that you're not supposed to walk through an overhead door that is open?
No, I never heard of that.
Yeah, apparently it's a thing. As I keep on talking
in France, it's illegal to name your pig Napoleon.
What?
In France, it's actually still on the books that it's illegal to name your pig Napoleon.
I don't know. Is it supposed to be an insult to the pig or an insult to Napoleon? I mean, what's the reasoning for that?
The law's been on the books for a few hundred years, and people just forgot to repeal it.
It is kind of stupid.
I don't think it's been enforced for hundreds of years, so I don't think anyone gives a shit, but it's on the books there.
Yeah. Although a lot of people could argue that a whole bunch of laws are on the books mostly just so that some bureaucrat or whatever can like come randomly at a random citizen. Hey, you broke this law, whenever they arbitrarily want to enforce that law to like.
Yeah,
get them.
You got a license for that, Freedom?
Yeah, you got a license to build that shed on your property?
Do you have a license to say that?
Hey, should you really be walking through that overhead door? No.
You have a license to walk through that overhead door?
Yeah.
You need to wait 12 hours and have the sloths at the Secretary of State fill it up.
JC Armitage says, nah, the Dems still support all the racist policies they did 150 years ago, such as minimum wage, welfare, gun control, etc. The only difference now is the rhetoric used to justify said policies. I think you got the timeline a little bit wrong there, because 150 years ago would be like 1870, and gun control wasn't as prevalent, and I don't even think that minimum wage was a thing back then.
No, it wasn't. I think that came about during the Wilson administration.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, so don't quote me on that.
Now, don't get me wrong, people. There might very
Yeah,
well
everyone
be
else-
there might very well be a racist ulterior motive for supporting some of these policies, but I don't want to go off of assumptions constantly of assuming what ulterior motives people might have, like Democrats, for example. I mean, you might have one Democrat that thinks, "Oh, I want to institute gun control because I don't want those dark people to be owning guns or whatever." But then on the other hand, you might have another Democrat who's all like, "I don't want people in general to be owning guns because it's a dangerous tool that people can use to kill people, and look at the gun homicide rate and yada yada, all the other bullshit." Same thing goes for minimum wage. The one Democrat be all like, "I want to institute minimum wage to prevent darker folk or make it harder for them to get a job in general," whereas the other Democrat would be all like, "I want to institute minimum wage so that people are more financially secure," and blah, blah, blah. It was more like 150 years ago, but my point still stands as JC. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just gonna leave that be for right now and continue on. Continue and further perfect its programs of assistance to the millions of workers with special employment problems, such as older workers, handicapped workers, members of minority groups, and migratory workers. Strengthen and improve the federal state employment service and improve the effectiveness of the unemployment insurance system. Protect by law the assets of employee welfare and benefit plans so that workers are who are the beneficiaries can be assured of their rightful benefits. Rightful benefits. You don't have a right to other people's services and whatnot. If you agree to still work for your employer, but they're not giving you a benefit that you supposedly that you want, well, then that's on you for sticking in that job and not being a better negotiator, or finding another job that will be more likely to give you the benefits that you want. So, yeah, again, it's not right. Assure equal pay for equal work regardless of sex. Again, gender pay gap is bullcrap. Clarify and strengthen the 8-hour laws for the benefit of workers who are subject to federal wage standards on federal and federally assisted construction, and maintain and continue the vigorous administration of the federal prevailing minimum wage law for public supply contracts. Extend the protection of the federal minimum wage laws to as many more workers as is possible and practicable. Continue to fight for the elimination of discrimination in employment because of race, creed, color, national origin, ancestry, or sex. Provide assistance to improve the economic conditions of areas faced with persistent and substantial unemployment. Okay. So I think this was like an announcement from the Eisenhower administration. And if Eisenhower was really for the federal minimum wage, well, then that disappoints me about the guy.
Oh, I believe that was true. Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. The quoted portion did not specify expanded access to unemployment insurance benefits. However, the introduction introduced matters of expanding that benefit, as well as Social Security and even health care. The word protect did not appear in that bit, but it did state, quote, "We are proud of and shall continue our far-reaching and sound advances in matters of basic human needs. Expansion of Social Security, broadened coverage in unemployment insurance, improved housing, and better health protection for all our people. We are determined that our government remain warmly responsive to the urgent social and economic problems of our people. We shall continue to seek extension and perfection of a sound Social Security system," unquote. I thought this was a video, Brandon Paget says. I don't know. Well, okay, Brandon. I hate this 200 character limit. Blah, blah, blah. Did you know that in San Francisco there should be a spittoon in all public transportation vehicle, like the cop cars and the trolleys says sent 1,000? Well, that's dumb if that's really something that somebody
Well,
believes.
I believe it was because that they maintain you have a pail and a broom in your car in some areas. That was because that law is so old. It was from when carts were all driven by horses, and they had a mandate you had to clean up your horse's crap.
Mhm.
So, and even though obviously our modern cars don't leave a shit on the road, the law is still on the books.
On the matter of supporting and encouraging labor unions, the 1956 Republican platform stated that workers have benefited by the progress which has been made in carrying out the programs and principles set forth in the 1952 Republican platform. Workers have gained and unions have grown in strength and responsibility and have increased their membership by 2 million, it pledged to revise and improve the Taft-Hartley Act so as to protect more effectively the rights of labor unions, management, the individual worker, and the public. The protection of the right of workers to organize into unions and to bargain collectively is the firm and permanent policy of the Eisenhower administration. In 1954, 55, and again in 56, President Eisenhower recommended constructive amendments to this act. The Democrats in Congress have consistently blocked these needed changes by parliamentary maneuvers. The Republican Party pledges itself to overhaul and improve the Taft-Hartley Act along the lines of these recommendations. So I guess there is a point to be made slightly that Democrats were slightly more economically leaning back then as compared to nowadays. I mean, if that's really truly the case, well then good on them back then, but bad on them nowadays.
Yeah, I mean Nixon started the EPA and put in price controls at gas pumps that led to mass shortages. So yeah, were a lot of mid 20th century Republicans economically left wing in some ways? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean
everyone knows that.
Nixon is like the biggest example of Republican leftism or Republican economic leftism, anyways.
Oh
The
yeah,
most stark
Nixon
example.
was pretty much a center left president, no question.
Yeah. Um. By contrast, the 2012 Republican Party platform said of workers and employment insurance and worker protections that the best jobs program is economic growth. We do not offer yet another made in Washington package of subsidies and spending to create temporary or artificial jobs. We want much more than that. We want a roaring job market to match a roaring economy. Instead, what this administration has given us is 42 consecutive months of unemployment above 8%, the longest period of high unemployment since the Great Depression. Republicans will pursue free market policies that are the surest way to boost employment and create job growth and economic prosperity for all. In all the sections that follow, as well as elsewhere in this platform, we explain what must be done to achieve that goal. The tax system must be simplified. Government spending and regulation must be reined in. American companies must be more competitive in the world market, and we must be aggressive in promoting U.S. products abroad and securing open markets for them. A federal state-private partnership must invest in the nation's infrastructure, roads, bridges, airports, ports, and water systems, among others. Federal training programs have to be overhauled and made relevant for the workplace of the 21st century. Potential employers need certainty and predictability for their hiring decisions, and the team of a Republican president and Congress will create the confidence that will get Americans back to work. Right. The 2012 Republican Party platform set of workers. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to like double check to make sure that I was getting the timeline right because I thought that this might have been like, I don't know, some 60s or 70s quote. And I was like, wait, what? But no, this statement right here is in 2012, whereas compared to this was back in the 50s. Unions were also addressed in the 2012 platform in a somewhat different manner. Okay, I remember what I was wanting to say. There's something I was wanting to say about unions back here. My problem with the whole union debate is, okay, I'm not against unions being able to form private sector unions. And as long as they do not violate a business owner's, property rights or whatever, if they can negotiate better deals for their workers consensually, well, then fine. But I don't want the government to be putting in like regulations that mandates that businesses are to follow the unions because of this reason or that reason, or even mandate that the workers must join a union. That's another problem with the whole union debate. Is
Basically, I support right to work.
Yeah, a lot of Republican governors, they'll like put in policies to, right to work policies, as you said right there, where you don't have to join a union in order to work for a manufacturing company, for example. And then Democrats will throw a big old hissy fit about that sort of thing. I mean, what's so controversial about that anyway? Do you know, Lognoth?
The argument against right to work is generally that workers who don't pay union dues benefit from labor unions without paying for those benefits, and thus are being parasites.
But if they're not joined in a union, are they really receiving their benefits from the union themselves?
The argument is that they are, because they're working for a job that where unions have lobbied for the workers. So that's the argument, but I don't think it flies, because I definitely think a union should be accountable to their workers. No one should be forced to pay them as a consequence of employment. If that's the case, why would the union really care about the individual concerns of its workers?
So basically, it almost sounds like the Democrats in that case are saying, are being critical of the workers more than the business owners. Oh, you're being a freeloader from our hard work to try and get you these benefits, and now you're not joining us so that you pay your union dues or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I still believe in right to work, but they seem to have their own criticism, like, misdirected, thus to say. Unions were also addressed in the 2012 platform in a somewhat different manner. We will restore the rule of law to labor law by blocking card check, enacting the Secret Ballot Protection Act, enforcing the Hobbs Act against labor violence, and passing the Raise Act to allow all workers to receive well-earned raises without the approval of their union representative. So far, not controversial in my eyes. We demand an end to the project labor agreements, and we call for repeal of the Davis-Bacon Act, which costs the taxpayers billions of dollars annually and artificially high wages on government projects. We support the right of states to enact right to work laws and encourage them to do so to promote greater economic liberty. Yeah, like we just commentated a little bit earlier. Ultimately, we support the enactment of a national right to work law to promote worker freedom and to promote greater economic liberty. We will aggressively enforce the recent decision by the Supreme Court barring the use of union dues for political purposes without the consent of the worker. I mean, nothing controversial right there. Although, then again, I don't know if Snopes here is necessarily being critical of the two differing positions that the GOP held in the 1950s compared to now. But
I wonder if Snopes will rate Brian Williams' client a math problem that was off by 1,000,000-fold as mostly true.
Mm-hmm. I will say that this is a nice little read here to like keep things in perspective as far as the history of parties' beliefs go. But
Yeah,
at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, to all the people who go sharing this article, I almost get an implication from them thinking that it's a bad thing that the Republicans like change their beliefs. I mean, if they changed their beliefs,
I just see it as hypocritical because the Democrats have changed a lot more than the Republicans have over the years.
Yeah, and I say
like Trump would be a pretty much typical Democrat 30 years ago.
Right. That's what a whole lot of Don the Plebs fan bases said. Trump is just basically a 90s Bill Clinton-esque Democrat.
Pretty much, complete with the extramarital affairs and everything.
Right. But I'm thinking to myself, if the Republicans really have gone slightly more right-leaning on their policies, then good. What unions might have done in the past is irrelevant. Today, they're nothing more than another extortion racket by the states, says JC. I guess I agree. Cat Chat says she's got to go. See you later, Cat Chat.
Yeah, it's only extortion if the workers are forced to pay them. If workers are paying them voluntarily through right to work, they should have every right to exist. Only in the private sector, though.
In a lot of states,
you're being paid with my taxpayer dollars. You don't get to negotiate shit. All right, the voters do that.
Right. JC Armitage also says further up in the chat, in a lot of states you're forced into joining a monopolized union. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm against that firmly.
If a worker is good at what they do, then I would keep them, says Sent1000. Yeah, I mean, that should be obvious, but we live in crazy banana world.
Clown world, yeah.
We live in a crazy world nowadays. Live in clown world. Republicans in 1956 appeared markedly softer on matters of immigration and asylum, as their platform explained. I mean, you turn the clocks back even further to the early 1900s and late 1800s, and everybody was softer on immigration. I mean, as Milton Friedman had once said, but that was, of course, before we had such a massive welfare state. The Republican Party supports an immigration policy which is in keeping with the traditions of America in providing a haven for oppressed peoples, and which is based on equality of treatment, freedom from implications of discrimination between racial, nationality, and religious groups, and flexible enough to conform to changing needs and conditions. In that concept, this Republican administration sponsored the Refugee Relief Act to provide asylum for thousands of refugees, expellees, and displaced persons, and undertook in the face of Democrat opposition to correct the inequities in existing law and to bring our immigration policies in line with the dynamic needs of the country and principles of equity and justice. We believe also that the Congress should consider the extension of the Refugee Relief Act of 1953 in resolving this difficult refugee problem which resulted from world conflict. To all this, we give our wholehearted support. I mean, it's not too disagreeable of a policy for back then, although I do not know for the full extent of how much welfare they provided back in the 50s, that America provided back in the 50s, but my immigration position has kind of changed over the years slightly. I mean, I used to be like, I guess you could say hardcore, a harder core against illegal immigration, but nowadays I take a little bit more nuance with that. I mean, yeah, I'm still not an illegal immigration apologist, but at the same time, if we didn't have as much of the welfare state that we have nowadays, and I'd say that more lax and even open immigration is fine. I guess you can say I'm more in the Milton Friedman school when it comes to immigration. How about you, Loudmouth?
On legal immigration, yeah, I guess it has to be controlled and all, but I don't really know if I'm for Trump's wall per se. But not that it's going to get built anyway.
Although, do you know the Friedman School of Immigration, or I used school.
I read a Road to Serfdom many years ago, and I remember it vaguely. So yeah, re-enlighten me.
Yeah, basically, if I remember correctly, Milton Friedman's position on immigration was if we did not have the massive welfare state that we do nowadays, then open borders immigration is fine. But because we have a welfare state, therefore there should be some checks on immigration.
Well, the thing is, it's more than just welfare, though, that illegal immigrants come for, though. So I don't know if I fully agree with that either.
All right, well, we'll leave that.
Open borders would have other negative ramifications because even if you had no welfare state at the moment, if you invite a bunch of people and they become U.S. citizens, they can end up voting for a welfare state in the future.
That is a bit of an issue, but at the same time, if
Danger of democracy, basically.
If there was like a right, I mean, on the other hand, we would have to like restore more of our Republican-esque type of voting system. You know, like make it so that only property owners can vote instead of just any welfare bum. You know.
Yeah,
Although,
that gets criticized so much, but it makes sense. If you're if you own property, you have a much higher stake in who wins elections than if you don't. Does it not? So it kind of makes sense, particularly if you're voting on like a property tax issue and you don't own property. You're just going to vote yourself a pay raise and someone else to pay for. Instead of working for a living, you vote for a living.
I find it funny that True Grave has not arrived in this chat yet, watching this episode. But oh well, he can watch this later, I guess. But
there's a quote by Ben Franklin on the matter. He said, "Democracy is like two wolves in a sheep voting on what to have for supper."
Mm-hmm.
Good old Ben Franklin.
Yep. So continuing on, I guess. In 2012, the GOP platform was slightly more stringent. We recognize that for most of those seeking entry into this country, the lack of respect for the rule of law in their homelands has meant economic exploitation and political oppression by corrupt elites. Yeah, that's because of the existence of a minimum wage law. If the minimum wage law did not exist, well, then those illegal immigrants could not be exploited as much. Literally, not just... They could like be more negotiating of their minimum wage, or I don't know. Anyway, in this country, the rule of law guarantees equal treatment to every individual, including more than 1 million immigrants to whom we grant permanent residence every year. That is why we oppose any form of amnesty for those who, by intentionally violating the law, disadvantage those who have obeyed it. Granting amnesty only rewards and encourages more lawbreaking. We support the mandatory use of the systematic alien verification for entitlements SAVE program, an internet-based system that verifies the lawful presence of applicants prior to the granting of any state or federal government entitlements or IRS refunds. We insist upon enforcement at the workplace through verification systems so that jobs can be available to all legal workers. Use of the E-Verify program, an internet-based system that verifies the employment authorization and identity of employees, must be made mandatory nationwide. State enforcement efforts in the workplace must be welcomed, not attacked. When their advantage, because as far as who will get employed, the legal citizen is more strictly held to account that they have to work for the minimum wage. They cannot work anything below that. Otherwise, the business owner is breaking the law. You know, they cannot work below that, so that they cannot work below 725 so that they can actually compete with the illegal immigrant on as far as who the business owner will be more incentivized to hire and whatnot. In addition, is why we demand tough penalties for those who practice identity theft. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello. Did he just cut out says sent 1,000? Yeah, apparently I did. Holy shit. I don't know what happened there, folks. I really don't. Holy shit. Screen number 1, allow. Welcome back, Dark Con. Thanks, sent 1,000. Did the stream just stop for anyone else, or was that just me? No, the stream did not technically stop, JC, it seems, but I just got kicked out of the call for a split second there. I don't know what happened there, but Loudmouth is now gone. Oh well, I'll continue on. What the fuck just happened? Apparently, I got kicked out, and I do not know what happened to Loudmouth, but I guess thank you, Loudmouth, for joining along and giving your insightful commentary on all this news and whatnot, and particularly about the coronavirus. Like, I wanted to give my own commentary about the coronavirus, but it's nice to have a bit of an opposite opinion on the coronavirus. But I'm going to start over this segment and finish off this article, and then I'm probably going to call it a day on this stream, folks. In addition, it is why we demand tough penalties for those who practice identity theft, deal in fraudulent documents, and traffic in human beings. Okay. I don't know. I don't necessarily see that immigration per se has to be regulated in order to combat identity theft. I can only imagine that there are other ways to hold identity theft accountable without having to actually restrict movement, movement from one country to another. Just to argue for devil's advocate, anyway. Is why we support Republican legislation to give the Department of Homeland Security long-term detention authority to keep dangerous but deportable aliens off our streets, expedite expulsion of criminal aliens, and make gang membership a deportable offense. I will say that I at least agree with that. I mean, if you're a member of a violent gang, well, then that should okay. If you're found to be a member of a gang while you're still in the middle of naturalizing, well, then as a citizen, but are not yet a citizen, well, then I do think that is automatic grounds for you to be deported, whether or not you came in legally or not. Anyways, it seems like here we can have differences of opinion without causing a fight, which I like. So sent 1,000. Yeah, me and Loudmouth did not necessarily argue, but it was we discussed our differences. So wait. It is why we support Republican legislation to give the Department of Homeland Security. Or wait, I already read that one. Never mind. Social Security warranted a few mentions in the 2012 platform, most notably in this portion. Okay, for some reason my screen sharing is bugging up on me. I don't know if the screen sharing is part of the problem with the streaming here or not, but let's move on. For much of the last century, an opposing view has dominated public policy where we have witnessed the expansion, centralization, and bureaucracy in an entitlement society. Government has lumbered on stifling innovation with no incentive for fundamental change through antiquated programs begun generations ago and now ill-suited to present needs and future requirements. As a result, today's taxpayers and future generations face massive indebtedness, while congressional Democrats in the current administration block every attempt to turn things around. This man-made logjam, so-called stalemate in Washington, particularly affects the government's three largest programs, which have become central to the lives of untold millions of Americans: Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Among the remaining points of the graphic, gender pay discrepancy was not directly referenced in the 2012 platform. While the two platforms from 1956 and 2012 may appear starkly different when compared side by side, one must also keep in mind that the Republican Party tenets referenced in this meme predate many of the issues American voters now feel are central to their lives 60 years ago. 60 years on. Yeah, immigration, for example. It wasn't as much of an issue back then as it is now. But anyway, that's the end of the article. And what I have to say about this article right here, I mean, it's a nice piece of information to keep things in perspective, to keep history in perspective of Republican positions. But at the same time, I'm just thinking to myself, good. It's a damn good thing that they have changed their beliefs. The Republicans have changed their beliefs, at least on the surface anyways. It's questionable as to whether or not that they that their voting records hold up in comparison to their espoused beliefs, but just the surface level, looking at their beliefs, I say good. JC Armitage says, whoever wrote this is definitely right about one thing. Welfare statism is completely unsustainable, even more so than regular statism, says JC Armitage. Yeah, we can agree on that. Anyway, I think that's where I'm going to end it off, folks. Hope you enjoyed. And as always, I'm the Dark Conservatarian. Hope to see y'all later. And I guess I should say this. I'll be gone for probably about a week as far as content goes. Like, for the next week, there's going to be a bit of a blackout in content because I'm going to be super busy for the next week. Business trip and all. But anyway, that's all I got to say. And I'll see you guys probably next Monday when I upload some. Hope to see y'all later. Good night and God bless. Adios.